Of those remains. President Obama is doubling down today on his call for more money for higher education after presidential candidate Rick Santorum called him, quote, a snob over the weekend. Speaking in front of the nation's governors at the White House today, the president challenged them to stop cutting from the classroom and seemed to react to Santorum's statement with this.
We're not just talking about a 4-year degree. We're talking about somebody going to a community college and getting trained for that manufacturing job that now is requiring somebody walking through the door handling $1 million piece of equipment.
And joining me now, Connecticut Governor, Democratic Governor Malloy. Governor, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. It's great to be with you.
Thanks for joining me. Let's talk about education here for a second, because the president today called on all governors in this country not to cut from education. How realistic is that right now, given the state of the economy?
Well, I think it's getting more realistic than it might have been a year or 2 years ago. As you know, this president inherited an economy in free fall. That's stabilized. In fact, we've added jobs for the last 23 months in a row, a total of 3.7 million jobs, including, by the way, in reference to the community college discussion, over 400,000 manufacturing jobs, the first back-to-back increase of manufacturing jobs since the early 1990s. So, you know, this president is focused on what it's going to take to sustain economic growth. We cannot tolerate being the 16th best nation at educating people, and that's where we are right now. We used to be number 1. We're now 16th.
But Governor, I want to speak to that, because there are those in the education reform movement who cite that same statistic, but they also point to the fact that we spend more per pupil in this country than a lot of industrialized countries do, but we're not seeing the return on that investment. What do you say to that?
I think they're right. That's why spending has to be accompanied by reform. We need to hold people to high standards. We need to hold students to high standards, teachers, administrators, boards of education, mayors. We need to hold everybody to a high standard. We have gone from being number 1 in the world in education to number 16. This didn't happen in the last year, the last 4 years. This has been a long decline over a 20-plus year period of time. It's time to reverse that, and that's what we've got to do.
President today also, I understand, called on governors to invest more, to create jobs in their states. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, I mean, I think that the president had a far-ranging discussion with the governors who were in Washington today for our conference. And you know, it really was quite a remarkable experience. He took questions in the private session from Republicans, from Democrats. He gave reasoned answers to every particular point that was being made. It was a strong performance by somebody who clearly is focused on the future.
Was there a bipartisan mood in that room, Governor? Be honest with me.
Well, you know, I think you know, people aren't going to say, Republicans don't say to this president in his presence what politics otherwise requires them to say outside. You know, there was a discussion about Simpson Bowles and what it takes to put this country
the deficit reduction plan.
The deficit reduction plan. And the president rightly pointed out that he has made more cuts on the domestic side that Simpson Bowles calls for. He did have a difference on the military spending side, things that we need to complete our military spending program that's currently underway, but then quickly pointed out that although Republicans criticize him for not fully implementing Simpson Bowles, he could not possibly have done that because Simpson Bowles calls for revenue. And if you're going to call for balancing this budget, and by the way, I'm a supporter of balancing the budget, then you can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want this president to do the job, then you've got to come along. He has actually offered the American people $10 of cuts for every $1 of increased revenue, and Republicans have turned that down. That is simply unacceptable.
Connecticut Governor Dannel Malloy. Governor Malloy, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Craig.
Billy Crystal's return to the Academy Awards did not